So hello, Sting. Thank you very much for taking the time to sit and speak with me today. I know you've been very busy this morning and got a lot left to do today, so we'll try and keep it short and sweet. But obviously you have a lot of fans here in the Middle East that loved watching you as a kid and maybe want to follow in your footsteps. So what do you think is the best way for them to go about doing that?
To getting into pro wrestling?
Yeah.
Much the same way Shadia did. You know, I think you start with a phone call and some emails to WWE. Well, even before that, you know, get yourself physically right in the gym, some kind of training, you know, get that going right now.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're lucky enough to get out there and train in Orlando at NXT, you'll be ready, you know. So, I mean, that's the best route.
Yeah, you started as a bodybuilder, I think in California, and then you had no really intentions of going into wrestling, and then they kind of scouted you and said, or maybe you saw.
I wasn't scouted, no.
Okay.
I co-owned a Gold's Gym in California, and somebody came in one day with 3 big guys trying to find a 4th guy, and I didn't know anything about pro wrestling, but it ended up they invited me to come to a show in LA at the Sports Arena, and I saw Hulk Hogan and all the big stars, and I knew that then, you know what, I really do want to try this. And so I went through a wrestling camp, and 2 of the 4 of us ended up getting booked, and that was Jim Hellwig, who later became the Ultimate Warrior, and myself. We started out as a tag team, and that was Thanksgiving Day 1985.
All right.
Was our very first match.
Yeah. And so you're here today to talk about the WWE 2K18. Video games were much different back then when you first started wrestling. Did you ever have any idea or any thought that you would be in a video game like WWE 2K18 when you were first starting out back then?
Oh, no, I could have never, especially in 1985. No. And then over the years, of course, I was in video games, but I never ever believed that I would be in a WWE video game and under the WWE umbrella, and then with the 2K18, you know, with graphics and you know, the live events and pay-per-view events and that look just like they do at the event. You know, I tell everybody the first thing I saw was a picture of me in my red jacket when I wrestled Triple H, Levi Stadium in California, WrestleMania 2015, and it looked like a photograph. Just so real looking. Yeah. It's amazing. I would have never guessed all those years ago that would be me.
Yeah. And so what was it like for you when you were first starting out in wrestling? Obviously you don't just become Sting overnight, and you're not just wrestling with Hulk Hogan, you know, on pay-per-view at main event. What was it like for you when you first started out wrestling?
Man, it was almost like a culture shock for me. I mean, I left California, and I mean, I was around some pretty twisted people, you know, in the backwoods of the South and in the United States, and what did I get myself into? You know, wrestling in high school gyms in front of a few hundred people, sleeping in my car, you know, do a TV taping and get paid $25. I mean, just what did I do with my life, you know? But I had gone so far into it, went through the wrestling camp, and I knew that there was potential, and I stuck it out, thankfully, and you know, the rest is history.
Yeah, and so what do you think it was that helped you stand out? Obviously there was a lot of people, you know, at that same level as you were, wrestling in high school gyms and at conventions and bars and things like that, but obviously you stood out in so many different ways that elevated your career to allow you to do so many different things for the industry. What do you think were some of those things that really helped you stand out among the competition?
I think a work ethic, for sure. I mean, being there always and working through injuries and, you know, really working at, you know, your craft, your character, your brand, even the gear that you wear, and, you know, being physically in condition. And, you know, wrestling fans can see through somebody who's just kind of coasting and not really, you know, giving it, you know, your all in the ring. They can see through that. And I think also involving the crowd over the years, you know. to make eye contact with, the whole arena, to look at everybody and involve them in the match. That's why in the beginning I started going, woo, to try to get any kind of reaction that I could.
Okay. And the WWE 2K18 obviously has a huge create a wrestler capability. Do you think that wrestlers now could maybe even use this to kind of give them ideas on how to, make, they can design their own gear on the game and make a face paint on the game and they go, okay, that looks good. And
that's something I never even thought of. That's a very good idea. And man, if I'm just starting, I might at least attempt that and try it and see, what happens, because you can even create your own moves. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can do there from your own brand and colors and your look. Yeah, good idea.
Okay. And you gained a lot of influence from the Crow, and there were other wrestlers that also obviously gained influence from other wrestlers and maybe fictional characters. Is there anyone now that you would see, it would be cool if this wrestler or these wrestlers would take influence from this guy, fictional or non-fictional, maybe a Floyd Mayweather or a Conor McGregor or some other kind of character in a movie or a TV show? Is there anyone like that you can think of that if you were wrestling still now today, or you were 20 years old, you'd take influence from this person?
Yeah, I think just in general, I miss some of the characters. When I first started, Randy Savage. I mean, somebody so over the top, and I remember watching him do his interviews, and his hand is going like this when he's sitting, and his teeth are like this, brother. And I'm like, what the? I mean, this is like so over the top. But every character was like that, and so that's the way I was brought into, the business, and I think a lot of that has been lost. So just in generally speaking, I'd like to see some of the guys take from this guy, take from this guy, take from, I did that. I mean, we all do.
Yeah.
We all, steal from, little pieces from certain wrestlers, and I think that's missing. So I'd like to see, just in general, a lot of the guys do that and develop more of a character.
Is there maybe one or two people in particular that you can say, either from some movie or in real life, that you guys should look at this person and try to copy more from him, someone that stands out to you?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
All right, no worries. You were part of so many key points in pro wrestling for this generation, with the start of WCW, with the fall of WCW, and then going into WWE. What would you say, obviously going to WWE would be the pinnacle, but what would you say aside from that did you enjoy the most, being part of that ride and some of the highest points with the formation of the NWO? It's like you were a part of all of these major points in our generation for wrestling. What point were you having the most fun?
I think honestly when the Crow Sting, came into life, it was the second-class citizen thing, always number two, a long shot number two behind WWE. Boy, I could tell you stories about that alone.
Feel free.
But, to be all of a sudden number one, we launched the Monday Nitro show and then broke attendance records all over the United States. Right. Buy rates on pay-per-views and video games that were, highest grossing, highest selling video games of all time. Amazing. Looking back on that, it was a really good time, and wrestling, because of the internet and because of social media, just got so big, and that was at the very beginning of the whole internet thing. So that was probably the best.
Okay, all right. And what advice would you give to people today who are maybe just starting out in wrestling, or maybe they've been wrestling for a couple years? What would you say is the most important thing for them to, you talked about building your body up earlier, what would you say is the most important thing for them to do?
Respect for the business, respect for especially the guys that, been in longer, the seasoned guys, the veterans, and slow to speak, quick to listen. Everyone's heard that so many times today. But I mean, that would be my advice. I mean, it's just, if you just, a lot of times just zip your mouth up, just try not to talk, and just listen. And if you want to speak up, if you don't like something, come with an idea that's better. Don't just spout off something, I don't like that, or that doesn't work for me. That doesn't work.
Okay. Very good advice. So when you watch yourself in these games, what are you thinking? I mean, if maybe your kids are playing and one of them is Sting, one of them is Undertaker, they're doing this big fantasy match. What's going through your mind when you're seeing your kids or you're hearing about people playing as these dream matches and as you in the game?
It's humbling. It's flattering. It's a lot of fun. Gives me bragging rights. There's all kinds of stuff that goes into it. I can remember one time walking through a Toys R Us with both of my sons, and these kids were playing a wrestling video game, and they were playing me. It was me against I don't know who. Dad, they're playing me, and my kids just got to me, that was a great moment. Not for me, but for them,
Great. Okay. And some of the, sorry, jumping around a bit, some of the matches that you had with Ric Flair and some other people that went 45 minutes or even an hour long to a draw, you don't see a whole lot of that stuff anymore, maybe occasionally, but do you think that matches like that can still work nowadays, or was that just something that, during your era it worked, but now not so much? What do you think about that?
I think with the right two people and the right meat on the bone to chew on for wrestling fans, that it definitely can work. I mean, you got somebody, we talked about Shawn Michaels and AJ Styles earlier. Two great wrestlers like that, you put them in the ring together, I mean, they can pull that off. Mm-hmm. Tell a great story.
Last one. Okay. All right. And what do you think about the wrestling style today? Obviously, it's much different than when you started. You guys were wrestling, maybe 5-6 times a week in different towns. There was no social media. The style of wrestling was very different.
It was every night, just for the record.
Oh, okay, yeah, every night.
Just about every single night. Yeah.
So what do you think about the difference between the style of wrestling? Obviously now it's a lot more faster paced, a lot more bigger moves. What you guys were doing before was maybe a lot more storytelling, a lot more emotion, a lot more selling the moves. What do you think? What's your opinion on the different styles of wrestling? Obviously things have to change and progress, but what's your personal opinion on the old school?
Sometimes I think it can be just too much about all the moves and not really a good story. So I think it has to be a good blend of both of those things. The right type, the right personalities being put together.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.